Howdy folks, Joe Howard here. All right, before we get started with this week's episode of the podcast, a few updates for you. First of all, the WPMRR WordPress community update for this week is that Lesley, who was on this week's episode of the podcast, she's going to be doing an AMA, like most weeks, in the community. So it was really cool talking to her about this newsletter plugin she's working on, Newsletter Glue. If you have follow-up questions for her after today's episode, which I have a few that I'm mulling around in my brain right now, go ahead and ask her in the comment section of the AMA space in the community. So that's what's up with the community this week. So that's number one. Number two is the WPMRR Virtual Summit coming up. Shout out to our sponsors for this year's summit. As of right now, legacy sponsors GoDaddy Pro, Blog Vault, Green Geeks, WP Engine, Weglot, Cloudways, and WordPress.com. We've also got a few growth sponsors: Kinsta, Molly, Elementor, Paid Memberships Pro, SiteGround, and Jetpack. Excited as always, for this year's summit. I don't have a ton of updates right now for the summit because I'm recording this the day after I recorded Todd's episode last week. So one thing is that we're definitely getting all of our speaker information and sponsor details, all that's coming together very nicely. I don't have an admin assistant or someone really working with me except for Brian Richards, who is doing the day of and some of the speaker prep for the event, but I'm doing all of the Google Sheets, getting stuff together, and Google Sheets, keeping things organized. For me, it's not the most fun thing in the world to do, but I'm getting a lot of joy out of finishing those things up and seeing them really come together and feeling like we're as organized as possible. So, all that's coming together. We'll have some speaker announcements soon, probably a few more sponsor announcements coming up as well. So keep your eyes and ears peeled. Keep your ears peeled. Weird. Okay. That's all for announcements before today's episode. So let's get into the episode for today. I got to chat with Lesley Sim this week. So I kind of got to know Lesley actually in the WPMRR community. She's been involved in, she's been commenting here and there, introducing herself. She's been posting a lot in the newsletter niche space. And so I wanted to have her on the podcast to chat. Really cool person. I mean, those people who you have conversations with and zaps your energy, it takes your energy away. Lesley's the opposite. You jump off a call with her and you're like, wow, I feel refreshed. I feel great. Really thoughtful person. I'm really glad I got to sit down and chat with her. So got to talk about a whole lot of things. We have these new spaces in the WPMR community based on what stage of the business you're at. And our conversation really applied to all three. She talked about kind of pre-launch and scratching her own itch in order to start this plugin and this business, Newsletter Glue. And then we jumped into kind of how she got her first 100 customers, moving through that, building the 10K MRR mark. And then now she's either at that, maybe even a little past that, but building towards, that next MRR or ARR mark, what she kind of has planned for the next 6 months, what she wants to do there. So hearing her go through all those different phases and asking her questions about that, I mean, that's everything this podcast is about. So really excellent there. The last thing we did talk about was building in public. So she's active on Twitter, and she gave me a little bit of advice personally on how to do a better job working in public if that's what I choose to do and if that's what you as a listener or watcher want to do. So if you want to share the things you're doing, whether it's on, a hashtag WordPress Twitter, or whether it's on Reddit, or whether it's on, Instagram. I don't know how you would, do that on Instagram, but regardless of the platform you choose, she gives some really good advice, I think, on how to do that. And all of this conversation is within this, how to do all this while prioritizing mental health, making sure you're having fun while you're doing it, making sure you're not working yourself to the bone. So cool. That's it for the intro. Without further ado, please welcome Lesley Sim. Enjoy today's episode. All right, we are live on the pod this week with Lesley Sim. Lesley, tell folks a little bit about you and what you do with WordPress.
Hey Joe, thanks for having me on. I run a WordPress plugin called Newsletter Glue, and it's a newsletter publishing platform on WordPress. So you can use the Gutenberg block editor, and it makes writing newsletters the same as writing blog posts. It just kind of takes the hassle out of writing newsletters.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm on your website right now, which is just newsletterglue.com. And like the big piece that I'm seeing is like it just allows you to focus on writing and not on like the tech part of writing your newsletter. And obviously it's it's a WordPress plugin. It's built right into WordPress. So I was trying to think about, because I use ConvertKit for my email. Like that's what I use. So like my email, putting together an email for me is totally separate than WordPress. So I've got to like write something in WordPress, and then if I want to send a newsletter out about that, I almost have to like duplicate my work or rewrite it as a separate newsletter, which is kind of like something that could take me 15 minutes maybe to do both at once. It's going to take me like an hour because I got to like open a new program. I got to rewrite stuff. So that seemed to me to be yeah, exactly. And it's all the monotonous work of like, this should be easy. Maybe this should be automated. And it sounds like that's you're doing. So that seems like a big advantage of something of a newsletter tool. It's actually within WordPress, right?
Yeah, so that's basically the pain point that we try to fill. People who use us, like exactly what you said, right? Like you write something on your blog post, and then you're like, okay, now I have to publish it and let people know about it. And so I head over to ConvertKit, which in itself is like this mental switch that you have to make. Is not ideal to begin with. And then you go in there, and then the editors rewrite everything, re-upload all the images that you uploaded, have to test everything, make sure that typos are right, the links are right, all of that stuff, and then send it out all over again. And it's just a pain, I think. And I think what I'm trying to do is like right now email tends to be very isolated, and like it's in this like only goes to inboxes, and I feel like there should be like, I want to make WordPress the CMS for newsletters as well as for blog posts, if that makes sense. And so you can publish everything in there, store everything in there, and you have like a nice looking archive with a link that makes sense, rather than like the crazy link that ConvertKit or Mailchimp gives you, and it looks completely different from the rest of your site, and you don't have any SEO stuff going on there as well, and all of that stuff. So I guess that's kind of how we look at it.
Yeah, we're having a good conversation in the newsletter space in the WPMRR community, because people were chatting about like, should I make my newsletter open, or should I and give people links to be able to go see previous newsletters, as opposed to kind of making people have to sign up for my newsletter. And there are pros and cons, I think, to both. But one of the pros someone was saying in there was around SEO and being able to give links the URL you want to, and give like pages the titles and stuff you want to. And if like I'm trying to do that in ConvertKit, it's like, well, ConvertKit better do that, or like I'm kind of out of luck. But now we have WordPress powering a newsletter thing, so yeah, WordPress can help do that. So yeah, I think that's cool. One new area of the WPMRR community we have is kind of this like pre-launch area, and you were just kind of talking about this pain point you decided to build Newsletter Glue around. I'd be interested to hear kind of how you stumbled upon that pain point. Was this a pain point you had? Was this something you heard from other people doing email in the WordPress space? What was the thing that made you say like, I need to create a solution to this?
It was scratching my own itch kind of a thing. So I haven't written it in a while, but I have a personal newsletter, and this was when Substack was getting more and more popular. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Substack. Yeah, and so I felt like the thing that it provides is so simple, right? And like it should exist on WordPress, right? There should be something that just, because like WordPress already does like 90% of what Substack does, along with like 1,000 other things that Substack can't do, right? And so I assumed that there would be this thing like a plugin that exists on WordPress that lets me, and that to me was wild. Like why, it made perfect sense to me.
Yeah, I really like this idea of I think a lot of people, when they think about like starting a business or how do I, before I'm going to launch something, I need, this I need this like super original idea that like no one has ever thought of before. And I think starting a business is actually a lot easier than that, because you're talking about this kind of like, I saw this thing on Substack or I knew about Substack and I scratched my own itch to kind of translate that into WordPress. So kind of like this, bringing this Substack and WordPress together to create this new product is like, in my mind, it's actually in a lot of cases the best way to build a business, because you kind of have these two already proven things, right? Clearly, WordPress, this open source software, is pretty proven. I think, it's 40, something percent of the internet. Yeah, WordPress works. And you built Newsletter Glue to work with Gutenberg or alongside Gutenberg. So how was getting Gutenberg integrated or building this tool on Gutenberg? Is it something that you had to get up to speed on Gutenberg, or did you have you been working with Gutenberg ever since it came out? What was that like?
Yeah, so it's been tricky actually. I'm not sure if you're familiar with like the idiom or something like trying to build a plane as on the way down. So working with Gutenberg has been a bit like that. But we're trying to build like the plane on top of the plane as on the way down. So that's kind of the way it's been. So like, even basic things like patterns weren't really a thing when we started. Reusable blocks like have gone through at least 3 big UI UX changes ever since we started. So, and like there are big things happening now with templates and full site editing. So we're basically just kind of keeping an eagle eye on all of the development. I've helped test a bunch of FSE things as well. I've reported bugs, just like all of those things, because like we're like completely reliant on what happens with Gutenberg, because that's kind of our unique selling point. And it's what makes us, in my mind at least, really good and exciting and special. But it also means that we can only go as fast as the Gutenberg project goes. And then like obviously, all the people who hate Gutenberg are just not gonna like our plugin as well, and that's fine. Like there's still millions of people who are using the latest WordPress version, and we certainly don't have 1 million users, so there's still lots of space for us to play with.
Yeah, cool. We were actually talking a little bit offline before we started recording here about building products not for everybody, but for a certain niche or sub-niche of people, a very kind of specific target audience who are going to be the like best ideal customers or clients for you. So I think building for Gutenberg, you're totally right. Some people, I don't know who's still like, classic editor, but like I'm sure there's some people out there who think that, not everyone's going to love Gutenberg and not everyone's in love with Gutenberg, but Gutenberg continues to get adoption. And it's almost like, it's like us WordPress people know like the name Gutenberg or terminology, but for a lot of people, it's just like the editor now, right? It's just like how WordPress works. They almost don't even know about Gutenberg. So if you're going to, and all of us at some point are kind of betting on WordPress, right? Like if WordPress goes down to 0 market share, like we're all kind of out of a job, right? So we're all kind of betting on WordPress, and adding Gutenberg to that list doesn't seem like it adds a ton of risk, right? It's like I'm betting on WordPress. I'm betting on what powers WordPress now and what, Matt Mullenweg and the Automatic team has bet WordPress on as well. So you're probably, pretty safe betting on that too. So is that how it feels?
I definitely don't see it as risky, like, the Gutenberg project might fail. Like you said, right? Like it's at this point, the block editor is so ingrained inside the rest of the WordPress admin that the WordPress project would have to fail for the block editor to go away, I think. So I'm not too worried about that. It's just been tricky to kind of keep abreast of all of the changes and like kind of stagger our roadmap with what's happening. Like if we're too early, then like it's kind of we have to do the job of explaining Gutenberg features to our audience at the same time as explaining our own features. So like, for example, patterns. Patterns is difficult to explain to someone unless they're already familiar with Gutenberg patterns. So that's kind of been tricky because everyone's like, do you mean templates? It's like, no, we don't really mean templates. We mean patterns. What's the difference between patterns and templates? What's the difference between reusable blocks, patterns, and templates? And it's like, this stuff is tricky to explain. And it's a fine line that we walk.
Yeah, as sometimes those difficult to explain things they're a challenge because you have to explain them to people sometimes in order to like convert them into potentially a client. But it also gives you the advantage of, well, if you're the one to educate them or you teach them the easy differences between these things, it kind of builds this trust. And then, hey, maybe they'll become a customer. So it's like a two-edged sword a little bit. Cool. I'm on the website now. I'm kind of like checking out pricing a little bit. And it looks like you're doing, it's not monthly recurring revenue, but it's annually recurring revenue, which I guess is one's a subset of the other. But you're doing annual licenses for folks. How's that going in terms of like the business and things on that end? Is this, I'm not sure exactly how old Newsletter Glue is, if it's one of these 10-year-old products or if it's actually somewhat newer, but how is the whole business side of things going in terms of like pricing things and getting new clients to sign up and all that?
Hey, sorry, I just thought of something for the previous question about Gutenberg. Can I just add to that first?
Do it. Go for it.
Okay, so like the thing I wanted to mention also is, and like the thing that gets me really excited is, like, I feel like in the next, in 5 years' time, Gutenberg will just be WordPress and it'll be everywhere and everyone, knows what patterns are, knows what blocks are, knows what the block editor is, knows all the shortcuts, and like that's just normal. And what like makes me really excited is that we are one of the early adopters to this new world, this new ecosystem of Gutenberg, of React, of like blocks. And, I like, at least for me, like I hope that this means that in 5 years' time, we'll still be around and we'll be like the old established plugin in this new world of Gutenberg, in this new world of WordPress. And like, that's kind of where I hope that we'll be and why we've chosen the route that we've chosen instead of keeping doing like stuff the old way. So that's kind of the thing that I wanted to mention. So going back to your ARR question, so you're asking like when do we start and like how business has been? Is that right?
Yeah, and just hear, I guess, a little bit more about like the what stage of business you are, because I think that gives people good context. Because some people are at just beginning in their pre-launch, so the things we talk about, people have to understand, where they are in the business. Some businesses, I talked to Kim at Paid Membership Pro. That plugin's been around for 10 years, so like people who are just starting out shouldn't expect to be always at the same level as like Kim and Jason over there, right? So there's a lot of context just to what stage people are at. So people who are listening, they'll kind of be able to say like take certain lessons from it and adjust their thinking based on that. So yeah, I just kind of want to know a little bit about the stage of the business, like how many customers, clients you're working with right now, maybe what ARR range you're at right now, stuff like that.
So we launched the paid plugin on Black Friday without much fanfare, without like anywhere near the amount of promotion that it takes to get noticed during Black Friday, given that there are literally hundreds of thousands of plugins out there who are trying to promote themselves during that time. It was more kind of like we can keep tinkering forever, or we can launch at some point. And what I did was, I think I put myself on a list of Black Friday discounts, and I was like, okay, so like the list has gone out, like the mailing list has gone out, the promotions have gone out, and so like we at least should have our pricing page up. It should be possible to do a checkout at least. And so that was kind of what we aimed for. So I guess we are 7-8. We're in August, so 8 or 9 months old right now. Things have been going okay. I kind of go back and forth. Like sometimes I'll be like, it's unrealistic to expect too much in my first year. Like traction takes time. It takes time for people to get to know us. It takes time for SEO. It takes time to do all of these things, right? So like on good days when I have like my sensible hat on, I'm like, yeah, things take time. And then on like other days, I'm like, no, we should be so much further than we are. I've like, we've like talked to, like you see people on Twitter like posting their amazing magical numbers, and it's like you can't help but feel like I'm doing something wrong, or I need to work harder, work faster, work smarter. I'm missing, a trick here, or I'm missing a tactic, or like if only I did this, thing that nobody has told me I should do, then like sales will take off from there. So yeah, it's kind of hard. We have almost 100 customers now, 100 paying customers, which on one hand seems small, but again, if you put like my sensible hat on, I feel like most plugins don't have 100 paying customers. Even like ones with 100,000 active installs on the WordPress repo, like a whole bunch of them don't have 100 paying customers. So in comparison, we're actually doing okay. So that's it's a struggle. It's just kind of all really relative, I think.
Yeah, I'd have two things to say there. One is like I often feel like one of the greatest skills entrepreneurs can have is like being able to navigate that roller coaster of like one day you feel great, one day you don't feel great, and like doing that over a longer period of time. Like that's a kind of the secret of entrepreneurship, because sure, there are certain times when actually quitting may be the best option. Like if something's really not working and you have data to suggest that, moving on to something might be the best decision. So I'm not saying like every situation just requires you to like power through and like push through, but 95% of people who have been successful with something like did navigate that roller coaster and were able to, not over like one magical month that, maybe a few people have done that, but they're lucky, right? Most people have, spent a year or two working on something, and their what seems to be overnight success really was a lot of just navigating those ups and downs and trying to figure that out. The second thing is just that I think 100 paying customers over your first 8 months is great. I'm thinking about like how many signups that is per day, because I'm trying to think back to the early time of WP Buffs, and I remember getting an email, someone signed up, someone swiped their credit card. Oh my God, this is crazy. And getting like, at first it was like when we got like one a week, I was like, oh my God, this is great. And now, of course, the expectations are different, right? Like, usually it's like a few a day are happening, right, for us. But for you in your first year to be getting like, if we think about 100 paying customers over a whole year, it's like what, one out of every 3 or 4 days, but you've done that in 8 months. So I'm thinking that's one every 2 to 3 days. I mean, that's a really good clip to be getting paying customers, and hitting triple digits, I think, is a really good milestone. So I'll say congratulations to you. I think that's a great start.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. So, okay, you're at this kind of 100 paying customers right now. What's next for you in terms of turning those 100 into 200, or getting feedback from those first 100 in order to continue to make the product better, to make Newsletter Glue even more valuable to your current customers, so that for all future customers it continues to be even more valuable? Do you have kind of like a game plan of what you're thinking about, maybe for the next like 6 months or something?
To be honest, I feel like there's so much stuff I haven't done that it's just a matter of doing the things that I need to do. So I'm not, I'm like nowhere near the stage where I'm like, oh, I need to do this A/B testing thing and then like get this 2% change in this like part of the funnel, and then that like corresponds to this 100K new installs or anything like that. Like I'm so far away from that. Like right now we have out of the box install of EDD, is Easy Digital Downloads, and so like our accounts page is really hard to use because it's like we have not done any, like I just put the shortcode into the page and like that's it. So like stuff like that has to improve. I don't have any email, like it's ironic, but I don't have any email marketing right now at all. So the only thing that goes out is I have like a how can I help email that I send out an hour after a new customer buys our plugin. I mean, that's separate from like the purchase receipt and like instructions and all of that. So like after that comes out, then there's like an hour later, I send like an how can I help, introduce myself, so people know, they can talk to me directly if they need it. And like that's it. There's no YouTube video drip campaign where I show them how to use the plugin or any of that stuff. I don't have that for the free plugin either. So like all of these things are like super low hanging fruit that I just kind of have to go through and like get out the door. So I feel like at least for the next year, it's going to be a lot of that. Like content marketing, I've been trying to get that up and running.
Yeah.
I do like less, I would say like 0.8 posts a month right now, which is nowhere near enough, of course. And so, like just trying to increase that to once a week. And then like from there, twice a week will be a good thing, a good start. So there's just like so much stuff that I haven't done that I just need to start doing. And it's always a struggle because on one hand, I feel like, it should be super easy to write like a 5 email drip campaign and just get it out the door and start, get it going. But when you have like 50 of those super easy things that I should be able to do in 5 hours, it very quickly becomes overwhelming, and it ends up being the case where like everything gets pushed and I just do one of those 5-hour tasks, and like that a 5-hour task takes me a week instead of just one day. And yeah, I think that's just how it goes. I'm not sure it's possible to move faster than that while maintaining my sanity. If it is, please let me know how. Like I need to learn that.
I think you're smart to make sure that your mental health is a high priority, because it's really easy to put that on the back burner. I think the hardest thing I had to learn when growing a business was just that, and you know what? Honestly, I knew this, and I always really have known this. Ever since I heard it for the first time, I was like, that makes total sense. That has to be my guiding star. But for some reason, I still just kind of like fill time just like doing work that may not be the most impactful work. But the thing I usually tell other folks is like, and I actually really do try to follow myself, and I'm doing better these days. Okay, enough preamble. Here's the actual thing, is that 20% of the work that you do is going to have 80% of the impact, right? It's this principle. It's like the 80-20 rule. Pareto, exactly. Yeah, so you know it. So exactly. And if you can follow that, it's kind of two parts, right? Like one is, obviously there's doing that 20% of work, which most people can do. And in your case, that would actually be great, because then you're not overwhelming yourself. You're really focusing on the work that's the most important. And that is, if you can do that all the time, like you can kind of like take the other 80% of work and either put it on the back burner, or like if you don't get around to it, it's kind of like whatever, because it's not giving you the most impact or the most growth, whatever you're looking for in your business. The hard part of the Pareto principle is identifying that 20% of work, because you can't just be like, that's it. That's the 20% I have to focus on, because like in a lot of cases, you just don't know. So you have to like try 5 different things, like figure out which one of those 5 things is the most important. And then to do all those 5 things, it requires you to spend a lot of time doing it. And then you're out of Pareto principle, right? Then you're doing the 80%. So it's a hard balance to find, but I think that it's almost the solution is just to like actually actively and explicitly tell yourself like, it's okay to move slower. Like, it's cool. Like, I don't have to do all this work today. I don't have to do all this work this week. Like, if I don't do this work right now, like, is what's going to happen next week? Most of the time, your brain will trick you into saying like, that sounds cool, or that sounds fun, or that sounds interesting to do. Go do it right now. But like, if it's not done by next week, like nothing really changes, you know? So that's the hard part, I think, is just like telling yourself it's okay to do this slowly. It's okay to work for 3 hours a day. Like, I don't have to do 10 hours a day. Like, it's okay to move a little slower and figure these things out more slowly. And I'll get there, but I'll get there intact, as opposed to trying to rush to this magic finish line, that doesn't even really exist, and sacrificing, mental health or your mental well-being, or more time spent, enjoying the journey, which is what a lot of us look back and say, like, that was fun, but if you killed yourself trying to do it, it wasn't fun.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. I think, like, especially because we essentially started our business over COVID. And so, like, staying sane and, like, prioritizing mental health has been such a big part of my journey, at least. And yeah, so, like, sometimes, like, exactly what you said, right? So, like, sometimes when I'm feeling overwhelmed, like, instead of doing the work, which is the reason that's making me overwhelmed, I instead take the day off and, like, go for a walk, or, like, go hang out with friends, or go, do something else. And even though the work didn't get done, but, like, I'm in a much better mental space for the next day and the next day. And that, to me at least, makes more sense than, like, guilt tripping myself and, like, forcing myself to sit down for 2 hours or 3 hours and, like, do some work. And then, you come back the next day and you just, like, feel like crap because either the work wasn't good, or, like, you feel completely burnt out from forcing yourself to work the day before.
Totally.
And yeah, so, like, that's been kind of a struggle also, because, like, there's a lot of guilt, right? Like, do I do the work or do I take a break? And, like, both sometimes aren't great options. So yeah, like, I think, like, I think, like, the thing that I've become obsessive about is, like, protecting when my brain is, like, high functioning. So, like, so much of my time, I realize, is spent with, like, me feeling tired, or me feeling super unmotivated or unenergetic, or, like, not being able to think clearly and, like, sharply and, like, like, analyze things. And I think I really only get, I don't know, maybe 5 hours or less of that a week, where I'm, like, 100% on it, and, like, give me any problem, I'm going to, like, bust it out and it's going to be amazing. Like, I probably only have 5 hours of that a week, right? And, like, so any given, like, big problem that I can solve, like, has to be done within those 5 hours. Like, even if, I was talking about drip campaigns earlier on, right? Like, coming up with, like, the strategy for the drip campaign and, like, the first draft of the copy, like, what each email should be and all of that, like, that's hard, right? It's so easy to do it badly, but to do it well is really, really, really hard. Professionals get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that stuff. And so, like, I have to kind of do it during that 5 hour special period, throughout the week. And then, like, sure, like, the editing stuff can be done, when I'm not 100%, or, like, the uploading it onto my email provider can be done when I'm not 100%. But, like, the part where I'm creating something for the first time, like, that has to be done when I'm 100%, or it's just not good and it's almost not worth doing, at least in my mind.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think I try to prioritize my, like, highest functioning work, or the work that requires me to be the highest functioning, for, like, my mornings, because I think I'm more effective during my, like, first couple hours of the day, and then I totally, like, kind of drag off. Even by lunch, I'm a little bit like, wah, like, I'm drifting off a little bit, and the afternoons are a little better for, I guess, work that doesn't require me to, like, think so hard. I think I really like what you said about, like, the amount of time you're able to focus at that highest level every week. I think, honestly, it's, like, pretty brave what you said. I think, like, 5 hours a week, like, it's really easy to, and I'm sure you feel this, to, like, think about that and you're like, why can't I just do 10 high functioning hours? Like, I could do it. Like, let me just push myself into that. Or, like, 20 a week. That's only, like, half my time. Like, I could totally do that. Like, let's do that work then. And on one hand, I feel like there's benefit to pushing yourself a little bit outside your comfort zone. You get to, like, learn your limits. But I think that's where it's really important to like learn where you're feeling a little bit of that burnout or a little bit of that like, oh, I'm overextending myself, and to be honest with yourself, right? So many people these days, it's like fucking hustle culture of like, I gotta work, gotta do all this stuff, and it's what am I getting done? Who cares? I'm working, right? I'm getting the work done. Like that's just kind of like bullshit, right? It pushes you into this zone of like pushing yourself outside your comfort zone repeatedly or too much over the long term actually pushes you into total unproductivity as opposed to productivity. And being honest with yourself and being like self-knowledgeable and like okay and like present in your work and understanding that like this is who I am and like that's okay, right? Maybe that's like what we're all going for in life, right? Maybe that's totally outside of work, but that's, to me, that's always been the hardest part is like being comfortable with who I am. And I do like to push myself outside my comfort zone occasionally or for short-term periods, but you have to like do the work that's going to be best for you. So for like you, Lesley, your 5 hours are going to be solid. Maybe there are people out there that can do 10, right? Maybe there are different people out there that can do 10. And for those people, sure, they can do 10. But like, you're only going to do the work as effectively as you can if you're doing it true to yourself. So knowing that and being comfortable with that is super important. So I don't know, that was a little tangent, but I think that was an important thought that came through my head.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I mean, I think, and like even so like with the 5 hours, right? Like let's break it down a bit. I realistically think that it's like maybe 3 hours on one day and then 2 hours another day, and then like the other 3 days I'm just going to be doing, like more mindless stuff, like answering support tickets, designing easy stuff, writing easy copy, and all of that stuff, right? Like there's still work being done, but like for those like special 3 hours and 2 hours within the week, like 3 hour blocks and 2 hour blocks within the week, those don't happen all the time. And honestly, like I'm not really convinced people can do like significantly more. Like maybe I buy 10 hours, I don't really buy 20 hours. That person might be, I don't know, drugged up or something if they're doing that much.
Or just like they say they do 20 hours, but it's not that effective.
And I think one other thing is like when it comes to, and I think like, so like all business owners, especially those who are in the early days still, like I think they'll be able to relate to this. Like all the work that I do now, I'm mostly doing for the first time. And so pretty much all the work is outside my comfort zone. All the work is my best work ever because I've never done the work before, right? Totally. So like I'm redesigning the website now, and like I'm not a designer by trade. Everything is self-taught from like reading stuff on Twitter, reading blogs, doing courses, things like that. And so like the website you see on newsletterglue.com, that's something that I designed, and it's like the best work I was capable of at the time. And then I'm redesigning the website now, and that's going to be the best work that I'm capable of right now. And it's not because like, oh, look at me, I'm like so great, or like I was particularly inspired at this time or anything like that. It's just that like I'm always having to try my best because I'm not a design professional. And so, this is as good as it gets. Mm-hmm. And so if you're always pushing yourself for every single part of the business in order to get it off the ground, then that's way more tiring and way more like mentally exhausting than if you're an employee and like you're plugged into a system or a machine that's already running and you're told these are your responsibilities, these are the things that you have to do. You're responsible for like, these 5 things. Here are your KPIs, your goals, your targets. Here's the direction, run. And like when you're an employee and doing that, like you can afford to not always have to be like 100% on, creating new things, all of that stuff. You can actually kind of coast if you wanted to. I mean, there are lots of people who are like, I'm going to be like a badass, like high achieving, top performing employee. Like that's great. But I'm just saying that it's different when you're running a business and trying to get things off the ground. Like that's your status quo. Like having to be the top achiever, badass is the status quo out of necessity. And again, it's not to say that I'm so great. I'm just trying to say that it's like a struggle, right? And it's something that it's part of why like I kind of accept that I can't do, a thing that would take an employee 5 hours to do, like a drip campaign, takes me a week, because like I've never had to like go in and do a drip campaign like this before. And so even though I know like the tools for it, like writing it and making it good and figuring out how to convert and all of that stuff, like all that's new, right? And so it's hard.
Totally. It's definitely hard. I want to finish off this conversation. We talked a little bit about just making sure our mental health is solid as we're doing all this work, how to like effectively do our work, how to effectively build a business. This is one of the hardest things in the world to do, but how to do it without, killing ourselves to do it. You're pretty active on Twitter, and you do this kind of work in public model. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit, because I think it kind of touches on mental health and the because you're putting all the stuff out there that you're doing, the things you're doing well, the things you're having challenges with, like it's all kind of out there, and people could come and be like, hey, that's great. I liked your tweet, good job. Or people could come like, wow, you suck. Like, hey, that's not good. Hey, that doesn't feel great to see. And I was doing a little bit of kind of building in public with the WP-MRR community. I was kind of tweeting out some of the things I was doing, changes I was seeing, just updates for people so they could like just see what it was like to like build this circle community, because it was I just kind of thought it was a nice gesture to just do like a little thread every day. And I kind of fell off a little bit because I enjoyed the process of putting it out there on Twitter. But I found by putting it out there on Twitter, I had to actually be on Twitter, and then I would see other tweets, and then I would get like sucked into Twitter. And like, I don't like being on social media as much because I like get trapped there. I'm sure a lot of people listening feel that way. They're like, an hour later, they're like still scrolling, and it's like, what is this death scroll? This is crazy, And I like to just avoid that by just not even being part of it. And so I found by tweeting in public, I was like accidentally like putting myself into Twitter, which caused me to like go down these like Twitter rabbit holes or see what's trending that day, and like stressed me out. Just like, I didn't sign up for this. I just wanted to like put it out. I just wanted to like post and drop, right? So, or post and just, leave it forever. Like it's there. People can comment, okay, bye. But for me, it's bye forever. So, I want to know a little bit about you doing kind of this build in public model and what it's been like for you and how comfortable you feel with it, what keeps you motivated to keep doing it, all that stuff.
So I guess the big thing is, do you use any social media at all, or like zero?
Let's see. I have a Twitter account, and I kind of use it a little bit.
Do you have Instagram?
It's good to like know, because like,
are you on
like,
Instagram? Do you scroll on Instagram?
I have an Instagram, but I don't use it. I don't have it on my phone. I have an account because I used to post, but my last photo was like 3 years ago or something. I just like literally don't have it on my phone. I don't use LinkedIn. I have a profile that I made, a decade ago, but that was back when I was looking for jobs, and I don't use it for that anymore. So I literally don't use that. I do use Reddit.
Okay.
That's probably actually my biggest social media thing that I use, or what takes the most out of my time.
You spend like an hour a day on Reddit?
That's kind of like
would you say? Like cumulatively, right? Because you probably pop in and out the whole day.
Probably. And it's the thing that's like, to be honest, I started using Reddit because I was like 6 months ago or something that this like GameStop thing was happening, and I was like, this would be an interesting thing to be a part of. So I like bought some GameStop stock, and then I had to join Reddit because I wanted to just like see when this thing was happening that was supposed to like be this big thing, and like still hasn't happened yet. That's a whole nother story. Maybe I get into another episode, but that kind of drew me into Reddit a little bit. And then I found it's like, oh, this is like this cool, weird, like slice of the internet that I didn't even know existed, and I kind of got drawn into it a little bit. So yeah, I probably like an hour a day, honestly, like on my phone, just kind of like checking stuff out, seeing what these crazy popular posts are.
Are you on YouTube as well, or
that's kind of my status?
Not so much. Like, do you watch stuff on YouTube?
I watch YouTube every once in a while. I'm actually on YouTube right now during this, playing some
Oh,
lo-fi
wow.
hip hop in the
Interesting.
background of this, which I do all day, every day. Yeah. So I'm actually on YouTube a lot, but it's almost
But it's background
95% of it's
lo-fi,
in the background just to have some like ambient music.
right.
Exactly.
So the reason
So
the
their
reason I
algorithm
ask is like
always gives me so much of that.
yeah. So the reason I ask is because I feel like most people are on at least one or two social media or like video watching platforms or something like that, like every single day, and they spend like at least an hour, like an hour or two. You know, like if you combine Netflix plus Reddit plus YouTube or plus all these things together, you're spending an hour or two a day, right? And so when I started using Twitter more, I basically stopped using Instagram because like it just happened that I had that kind of hour or two mental space that I used to dedicate to Instagram, like not knowingly, but like that's kind of, you know, if I add up all the mindless scrolling that I did on Instagram. So I basically stopped that and then just did it on Twitter instead. So I guess like that's kind of how I find time for it. You know, like, yeah, I guess like when I'm working and I want to take a break or if like just completed something, then I'll take a screenshot and I'll just post it on Twitter and see, you know, and while I'm there, like I'll scroll a bit and see what people are talking about and respond a bit. And that's like, I don't know, 20 minutes, half an hour. So that's kind of how I do it, and that's kind of how I make space for it. I find like most people who say that they don't have time for Twitter, it's because they're, you know, doing Reddit or they're doing some YouTube. And those are all things that, you know, they're just like kind of interchangeable things that you make time for in between the rest of your day. I guess that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's kind of the same, I feel like, when people say like I don't have time to do anything, and most of the time you can just say, well, if you didn't have access to Netflix, like, would you have time? And the answer is usually yes, right? It's like, oh, if you watch like 3 episodes of a show every day, okay, that's like an hour and a half that you can get back. Going back to our previous conversation, I think it's probably important to take time off, and it's important to have time where you just can just, you know, watch a Netflix show that is a mindless show. That's fine. But maybe it's about like, okay, if you take half an hour of your Netflix time every day and put it towards work, okay, that's like 2.5 hours a week. So like, you know, you can make these small shifts to make time. So but I think what you said makes total sense. It's just like you have this block of time that's like your social time, and if you want to like spend it more on one, you just take away from another, and it keeps that block intact for the most part, but it focuses it more on your posting for the work and public
I think
work
like
that you do.
this goes to another thing that I'm big on, which is like enjoying your time on the social media account or the social media platform that you're spending the time on and like trying to grow. So for example, if you didn't like spending time on Twitter, then don't like, I think if you don't enjoy your time there, then it's just not a good use of your time, I think, especially if you're talking about social media stuff, right? So like, if, for example, you found that you've enjoyed Reddit so much more, then, you know, there's a huge WordPress community on Reddit, right? There's like loads of clients you could be getting on Reddit. You could be answering subreddits all day. Like that is, in my mind, like just as viable.
It is. There's the subreddit for WordPress is like 120,000 people. It gets like 100 posts a day or something.
And so, like fuck Twitter and like focus on Reddit. Like that's kind of how I view it. And just because, especially like if you already are there and you're spending time in it, you're gonna know how to talk about things the right way. So like I always feel really, really uncomfortable responding to stuff on Reddit, even if it's something that like I know my product will be the perfect fit for. Like I'm so scared of, getting downvoted, getting hated on and all of that stuff because I don't spend enough time on Reddit to know how to respond in the right way. I don't have like the, a good amount of karma, if that's even what you call it. I don't know any of that stuff. And, and it's like probably the same.
I don't post it all on Reddit either. I'm a total lurker.
Right. And maybe you should start, right? Because like you get more of the vibe and you know how it works.
Yeah.
And like same for Twitter. I think like if you don't spend enough time on the platform, you definitely come across as awkward and it shows that you don't spend enough time on the platform. And like the way you respond to people, it's like not natural. You just something kind of like performative and icky about it. And that like always shows. But yeah, like if you if you're on there all the time and you're chatting with people all the time, then you have like the right cadence, you have the right level of like formality, you know the right words to use, and I think all of that kind of plays into your success on the platform and how much you enjoy it, and it's like a virtuous cycle. So yeah, to me it like all comes back to making sure you enjoy the platform that you're committing to grow your business on. And yeah, any platform you can, like if I wanted to spend my time in LinkedIn and grow Newsletter Glue via LinkedIn, I'm like so sure that I can do it. It's just whether or not I enjoy that platform or not. And yeah, so that's kind of how I view building in public. Like anyone who's like, like my goal is to get 10K followers on this platform, and I'm gonna like grow it, and I'm gonna like do sales and all of these things, and like Twitter hack. Like those guys are gonna hate using Twitter, and in 6 months to a year they're just gonna disappear, even if they manage to grow their account to 10K or whatever. And it's just because like they didn't actually enjoy the platform or get that much personal joy or value out of it. So I don't recommend anyone do it that way. Like just have fun. Like if you're into Reddit, like look at whatever weird subreddits you're into as well. Like don't just spend time on WordPress, right? Like do the weird stuff. And it's the same with my Twitter. So like one of the things that I did was I really like illustrations and stuff like that. And so I follow a lot of illustrators on Twitter, which is like so not what Twitter is really for. Like that's more like Instagram type stuff. But because I don't look at Instagram anymore, so I like wanted to bring art into my Twitter feed. And so I've just been following a bunch of illustrators on Twitter, and it like makes my account so much nicer to look at and like brings me joy. And I feel like that's just a better way to build in public than like post your MRR and like hope that gets viral and shared and all that crap.
Yeah. I like the keep it weird, I think, is one of the more underrated best pieces of advice I've heard, because like we're all human and we're all weird in our own different ways. And I talked about this a little bit before, but like getting to know yourself and being comfortable with yourself and embracing who you are and embracing that weirdness is like so much of us, become happier and live happier lives when we've done that, I think. So, and of course, it's still a journey for everyone. Maybe no one has 100% found their weirdness, but to be able to embrace that a little bit and, follow who you want to follow. Hey, I want more art in my feed. Let's get more art in my feed. I can tell clearly you're into the art because your picture, your profile picture is awesome animated photo on your Twitter account. So yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap up is keep it weird. And that's liking what you're doing and liking what you're up to on the day-to-day is going to like mean you're still working on it in 100 days or maybe in 2 years. It'll give you the time it takes to actually like break through. If you don't like what you're doing, you're never gonna keep doing it. So I think that's it's under-told advice, but one of the most important things. So let's wrap up a little bit. Why don't you tell folks, Lesley, where can they find you online? Where can they find Newsletter Glue, all that jazz?
Yeah, thanks Joel. It's been great talking. You can find Newsletter Glue at newsletterglue.com. And on Twitter, we are at Newsletter Glue. So very simple. Everything's the same. And if you want to follow me directly, I am on Twitter a lot at Lesley_pizza. So that's LESLEY_pizza.
Yeah, she's got the pizza emoji and the name. She's got this cool animated photo on Twitter. Lesley, you're posting regularly, just work in public model. So you're really kind of putting out there the things you're working on. I saw you tweet out some like Notion notes, some notes that you're putting in a Notion, getting some feedback. So I think it's cool. It'd be cool to follow you, especially for folks, one, who want to give you feedback, interact with you on Twitter, but also who just want an example of what it's like to be working in public. You're having fun doing it, you're putting out valuable stuff, and you're doing it to, I think, benefit yourself and to benefit anybody who wants to follow you and see what's going on there. So yeah, feel free to give her a follow on Twitter. Lesley, last thing I like to ask our guests to do is to ask our listeners here for a little Apple Podcast review. So if you wouldn't mind asking folks to leave us a review, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, WPMRR podcast? Is that what I should call it?
There you go. Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So everybody listen to the WPMRR podcast. And when you're done listening, go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review because it's awesome. And Joe's awesome. And you should do it because you're a good person.
Oh, one of the best asks I've heard. Thank you, Lesley. WPMRR.com/review redirects you right there if you are on an Apple or Mac device. If you want to not just listen to us here on the podcast, but you want to interact with us, you want to build your MRR, you want to do it responsibly, head over to community.wpmrr.com. Lesley is a community member there. I'm obviously in there. We're working to help everybody responsibly grow their monthly recurring revenue, annual recurring revenue. So feel free to create an account at community.wpmrr.com. Lesley's also going to be doing an AMA soon. So if you have more questions for her about writing a newsletter, what it's like to grow your plugin, how to get your first 100 customers without, breaking your back, you've done it super successfully, Lesley. So we'll have some questions answered in your AMA when this episode.
Also happy to answer questions about writing newsletters, getting your first 100 or your first 1,000 subscribers. How do you do a paid newsletter? How do you do a membership with a newsletter and all the newsletter stuff? Ask me lots of questions about that as well.
Yeah, we'll definitely ask questions about that in your AMA. I may have to have you back on, Lesley, so we can have a podcast episode about that, because that sounds great. WPMRR Virtual Summit coming up September 21st through 23rd. If you register for the community, you will also automatically be registered for the summit, because we're going to be live streaming it right in the summit channel or the summit space right in the community. So to register, just register for the community. Super easy. If you are a new listener for us here on the podcast, feel free to go and binge some older episodes. We've got 150-ish episodes. Just go to wpmrr.com/podcast. We got a search bar there. If you're having a challenge with something, you can go search right in the search bar, find an episode that's going to apply to you and help you with that challenge area you're having as well. All right, cool. That is it for this week on the podcast. We will be in your earbuds again next Tuesday. Lesley, thanks again for being on. It's been real.
Thanks so much, Joe.
Bye, everybody.